Take a minute just to talk about what an electric atmosphere it was out there today. I mean, it was, obviously didn't have a whole lot, didn't really know what to expect. And as the day kind of progressed, you just kind of felt it building and building, and just what a great, cool moment for Green Bay, the Packers. Just really, really a cool scene out there, and it was a lot of fun watching it from the draft room. But I also wanted to talk about Mark. We kind of talked a little bit about it in the room, just about all the support and leadership that he's shown us over these years. I mean, we're just really, really fortunate. There's not a lot of franchises that operate like us, and to have the kind of leadership and support that he's given us. So, it was just a really cool moment all around. And again, got really excited to bring Matthew into the fold. Think he's going to do a lot of things for us. He's just obviously he's a very gifted athlete, gifted football player. But he's also just wired exactly how we want our guys in the locker room, and I think he's going to fit in really well. And with that, I'll take some questions.
I get that once you're on the clock, it's a football decision, right? But Mark mentioned it before announcing Matthew. It's been 23 years. We obviously ask you about it every single year, which I'm sure you'll miss. Yeah. Is there any, given the moment, given that it's here, given the drought, is there any even consideration of, wow, this is significant to finally take a receiver in the first round?
Well, I really said it in a different name, but Mark just announced what he announced, so it is what it is. No, I don't know. I didn't think about any of that until he got up there, and then you kind of saw, you saw the crowd. They're all Green Bay fans. You heard the chants and all that kind of stuff, and it was just really cool. But I'll be honest with you, I didn't even think anything like that. We were watching the board. We had a couple players we were discussing. There were trade opportunities, things like that. So you're going through all that and just trying to do what's right for the Packers. So none of that really came before me like that, but afterwards it did. It was just kind of like, wow, that's pretty neat, So.
Brian, he's 5'11", which maybe isn't your stereotypical outside receiver frame. Mm-hmm. Do you think he can play everywhere, and why do you think he can play outside?
Yeah, that's a good question, Matt. So he's kind of above the Mendoza line for that outside, but not by much. Obviously, he has. When you watch him, we thought arguably he had some of the best hands in the draft. Not only coming back to it and running through it, but when he tracked it over his shoulder and stuff too. So he's a strong athlete, So he's really versatile. He's going to do a lot of things, but we certainly felt that he could play outside, and that was important to us.
Brian, what did you like, or what stuck out to you when you sat down with him and he was here on the visit, and any other times you talked to him?
Authentic and genuine. Like, this guy's been through some things now in his young life, and come out the other side of it. And I think he's just very authentic and genuine. He knows who he is, he loves football, and I think he's going to be a great teammate around here. So just, again, those were a lot of the things that kind of, and we knew that before we sat down with him, and that was what everybody said at Houston and Texas, and everybody who's been around him. But it's certainly getting to know him, that came through.
Ryan, you told us he wants to be pushed. Is that what you mean when you say wired the way you want to be wired?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of those things, but I just think, this kid wants to be great. He wants to win, so he's been chasing this thing. And like I said, I think he's had adversity in his life and he's come out the other side of it. And the odds were probably stacked against him a little bit. He's, no player is perfect. And I think he's one of those guys that is just going to really work hard at it to be the best he could be.
Do you see, or what do you see in him? Do you think he can play a lot and contribute a lot in 25?
I do. We've talked in here before. I mean, I think the world's changed a little bit. It always takes receivers a little bit of time to get going. It used to be kind of that end of year 2, middle of year 3 when they really, things slowed down for them and they could really produce. So we've had a lot of history with that, where that happened. I think because of the high school football and the way they throw it around, 7-on-7s, and just some of the things that have changed on the lower levels, guys are coming in and making an impact quicker. And I certainly think Matthew has the opportunity to do that. Now, we got some good players in that room, so he's not going to have to kind of carry the load that way. But I think he has a chance to contribute. Not only as a receiver, but I think he's got some special team return ability as well that could help us.
With that said, how much did you feel like this offense, obviously the injury to Christian, the way that the season ended last year, really needed to add an infusion of that type of speed and playmaking at that position?
Yeah, that's good. And I think I told you, I didn't really think we needed to at all. Certainly, it's nice to, and we want to add as much talent and competition in that room as we can. I felt really good about our room prior, and if we would have gone a different direction, I would have had no problem doing that. He was, that we had a couple of guys on the board that we really, really liked. And, he just, like I said, I think he won us over, not only his play on the field, but just who he was.
Ryan, you were at his pro day, right?
I was.
I heard it was really good. What did you see, and did something in that jump out to you?
Yeah, I mean, again, pro days are pro days that are scripted. They're not in pads and stuff, but he had a good day. He catches the ball extremely well. I think that's the thing that jumps out at you, not only on tape, but when you see him play live. But I think that the one thing about, as we scouted him, he's a third-year junior coming out. He's a young guy, and I think he has his best football ahead. He's still got a lot of room for growth. He's not at his ceiling, and I think when you went to the pro day, I think he had progressed from the season till there with some of his route running, some of the things he did. So. He had a good pro day again, but that's this is scripted and that can be a little tough to put too much into.
Brian, how did you see his? You just mentioned progress, but how did you see his game progress when he made the transfer decision? When he went from Houston to then playing at Texas in the SEC.
Right. Yeah, and if you followed it, early on in the season, it was his production and maybe his reps and targets and things like that. It took a few games to get going. And then once they kind of realized what they had, then it just kind of took off, and he became a major part of what they were doing. So everyone speaks very, very highly of him there. That's obviously a very good program, and they train guys very well. So as does Houston. So I think he had 3 really good years, and obviously making that jump to Texas and playing in some of the games that he played in at the end of the year and producing like he did. I think certainly that helped him.
Along those lines, Brian, you talked about the challenges of scouting in the portal world, but does it help you in some regards that you got a guy who's been into school for 1 year, you got to see how he went from one system to another, how he can learn, because that's obviously what he's going to get thrown into here. Yeah,
that's helpful. I mean, he's been in 2 systems, right? And I think the one that he was at Texas was probably a little bit more closer to will resemble what we do, not obviously there's still going to be a big jump. But I think that was helpful to see him go from there to Texas, kind of step up a little bit in competition and still produce at a high level.
Why'd you bring him in for a visit?
Say?
Why'd you bring him in for a visit?
Oh, God, man, a couple weeks ago.
No, why?
Oh, why? Oh, I just think, he's a young kid, 3-year guy that transferred, and it was just one of those things we just wanted to get to know him a little bit better. And we had a really good meeting with him at the Combine and it felt really good, but we just kind of thought he was one of those players that might be staring us in the face like he was, and just wanted to get a little more comfortable with him.
Brian, there was some stuff out there that the Eagles were trying to trade up to 23. How close were you to trading back? And was there any consideration to not do it because of who was trying to trade up?
That last question, no. I don't care about that, but there was a few that we were talking to, and there was some opportunity to move back. They were tempting, but at the end of the day, we had a good player we all really wanted throughout the building, and I just thought it was the right thing to do that because, again, when you move back, it's unpredictable, what's going to happen. So we had pretty good numbers, but I just thought this was the right thing to do.
Giants call you? Sorry, Giants call you?
A few teams called us.
With a guy that has the kind of straight line speed Matthew does, what do you look for to know that that's important, but the fluidity to really be able to run the entire route tree, to be a presence on all levels? What do you look for to know it's not just sprint?
Yeah, sure. I think again, and that kind of goes back to one of the other questions as far as what they were doing at Texas as compared to what they were doing at Houston. I think that was helpful for him. He was asked to do maybe a little bit more there. But yeah, I mean, he ran all the routes this season that we needed to see, and certainly when we go through the combine and the pro days and things like that, I mean, they put those guys through pretty much everything. So if you have anything you're worried about coming out of the season that he may, not do well, you have an opportunity to see that. And but he's a premier athlete. He's going to be able to do everything we ask. And so really it's just going to be a matter of how quickly he can get up to speed and get comfortable with the offense and the players around him.
Back to the height, what is the Mendoza line you look for a guy that can line up on the boundary?
I think, I don't know if it would probably be right at that 5'11" mark, but I will say that there are guys that have played out there that have been under that height, but they usually have to have some kind of special trait, and speed is one of them, I mean, you have to be able to stretch the field. I don't look at this, when you meet him and stuff, like, he's put together pretty well, so I don't look at him as a small guy. I don't look at him like a guy that you could only play inside. He can play inside, there's no doubt about it, but he's going to be versatile enough to do whatever we ask him to do. So.
What do you like about how your board sets up going into tomorrow now?
No, yeah, I think, right now it looks pretty good. You never know when the runs are going to go, and all of a sudden it won't, but it looks pretty good. We got some really good players up that we're excited to get to tomorrow and see if we can add some players. There was you never know how these things are going to fall in the first round, and this one, this one felt pretty good for us the way we looked at it.
Brian, you talked about the versatility and him being able to play inside and out. You've had some guys here, Jennings, Nelson, Driver, that have done that as well.
Yep.
Is that something you guys value? Maybe you were talking about special traits. Is that something that sets a receiver apart as opposed to somebody who's more set to just play in one of those spots?
Right. I mean, versatility is always great. I think, the way, I will say, with the way Matt and his staff are able to kind of be creative and use these guys, that gives me a lot of flexibility with what I'm looking at too. Like, they do such a good job of scheming some of these guys and using them to their best ability. It does make it easier for me, so we don't feel like we have to do this or we have to do that, that Matt and his staff will find a way to make these guys productive and fit them into what they're trying to do. So, again, we obviously spend a lot of time talking about these things and how it'll affect our football team. And all those guys on the offensive staff, I think, are pretty fired up right now.
Ryan, he talked about playing against NFL caliber DBs in the SEC.
Yeah.
How much does that aid in your evaluation when he's from a major conference? Because you've had others that aren't playing out of the SEC. How does that help?
Yeah, it's not everything, but it is. I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, I think it's a big deal for their development. Certainly, I think obviously when you're going against NFL type players every day in practice, which he was, one got drafted in the first round tonight. That's different than maybe a guy who might see an NFL guy once in 11 or 12 games during the season. You know what I mean? So to me, a lot of that is, with some of these bigger school guys, it's the every single day I better show up and perform because there's a 5-star behind me that's ready to take my job if I slip up. So the fact that he made that choice to move up, again, it's much more normal than it ever has been in the world right now we're living in in college football. But he made the choice to go chase it, and then did what he did. I think it says a lot about him.
Your thoughts on his return abilities?
Yeah, no, dynamic. He can be dynamic. We'll see. I know. Not only our offensive staff, but I think our special team staff was pretty fired up too. So we'll see. I think certainly kickoffs will be something, an easy transition for him. And I think he can do some punts as well, so we'll see. But, yeah, he's when you take a guy in the first round, that's not the first thing I'm thinking about. But at the same time, I do think he'll help us there.
There were a couple corners and 2 or 3 undersized rushers still on the board too. What made this guy the better bang for the buck?
Yeah, no, there was a bunch of good players on the board. We could have gone a number of ways. We just kind of felt this was the best thing for our football team. And like I said, I think the guy mattered. I mean, certainly the players, first and foremost, but the person matters as well. Who we're bringing in this locker room, and this guy's a fit.
You kind of touched on it a little bit earlier with Mark, but seeing him make that pick and obviously the reaction that he got from the crowd being in Green Bay, how special was that?
Yeah, it was pretty neat in the room. I can't imagine what it was like out there. But it was kind of one of those things where you're involved in getting this done, and then there's still things going on, and then all of a sudden you kind of look up and Mike in our room turns the volume up so we can kind of watch it. And yeah, it was just one of those really special moments for our staff. We had a bunch of people in there, and Mark means so much to this organization and so much to each and every one of us to kind of see that moment unfold like it was pretty cool. Yeah.
When you're evaluating a receiver with a young quarterback already in place, you know who that guy is. Are you just evaluating the receiver, or are you thinking in what ways this guy might fit with your quarterback and that chemistry going forward?
I think a little bit of both, but certainly, I mean, whenever you're adding a player, particularly a skilled player on offense, like how does he fit in with your team? You know what I mean? And where's he going to make a short-term impact, and where would he be long-term impact? And so yeah, I think that's part of it.
In what ways do you think that Matthew might be able to aid and bring out the best in Jordan?
Well, certainly he's going to be a speed threat right away, right? He's one of those guys that covering him and from a man perspective is going to be extremely tough on teams. So when we get to some of those third down things where people are trying to mug us up and we need somebody to get open fast, he can do that. And then I think for me, and this goes back to, just as I can hear Ted in my head, but you got to catch it, and he has such good hands, you know what I mean? And I think, for me, that was a big part of it too.
You've always told us you can't fall in love with a guy, but sometimes it happens, right, Ted, with Clay, for example. You saw him at the combine, you went to his pro day, you brought him in for a visit. When did you really start to like Matthew? And also, he said he wanted to get a workout in tonight. Is that okay? You gonna let him in?
Technically, I don't think he's not allowed to come in tonight. I don't know what the schedule is for him getting in here, but I think to your point, you can't fall in love with players. You have to be kind of a little bit more, less emotional about it as you go through it. But I think early on from the tape, when we get in February together as a group, our scouts really, really liked him coming out of the fall. So we had good grades on him, so we knew he was going to be a guy we're going to spend a lot of time on. And then when you watched him in February, it was, he just was a really good player. So then it was a matter of, okay, we can't ever skip any of the steps along the way. So, so I think, every time we had an opportunity to be around him, whether it was, on his campus, the combine, we brought him in here, he just kind of checked the boxes, you know what I mean? And a lot of guys did. We had, there was other guys in this draft that did as well, but, he just, he felt like he was going to be a really good fit.
Brian, I just asked Matthew tonight, how ironic is it that you come here for a visit 2 weeks ago, and then yesterday you're coming on the talk show and you run into the GM and you shake hands, and he said, my visit here was remarkable, and he said right there when he was with you, he was like, come get me. When he was sitting on the board at night, did that go through your mind like?
No, no, but I don't do a lot of that stuff, those kind of shows. And then when I did it, and when I was there, he wasn't there. And so when I got up and I was leaving, I saw him, and I walked. Obviously he had been here already, and we had talked, so we knew each other. And so I went over there, and we started talking, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be all over something, right? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it was or wasn't, but I did think that at the time. I didn't think about it during the draft tonight at all. But again, I think it was a really good night for the Packers. I'm really eager to get back at it tomorrow and see how this thing falls tomorrow and see if we can do some good. So, but I think you guys are going to really like him as you get to know him.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.